have talent. You have vision. You have moments where you see clearly what you're capable of. Moments where you feel the full weight of your own potential pressing against the inside of your chest. And then something happens. You stall. You procrastinate on the work that matters most. You pick a fight right before the breakthrough. You get sick the week of the launch. You reach a certain level and, somehow, quietly, always, you dismantle it. You've told yourself it's discipline, mindset, habits, the wrong routine, the wrong system. You've read the books. You've tried the frameworks. You've promised yourself that next quarter, next year, next version of you, it will be different. And yet, here you are again, standing under the same ceiling you've been standing under for years. The ceiling isn't made of glass. It isn't made of circumstance. It isn't made of the economy, or your background, or your lack of connections. Those are the stories you've been using to explain a pattern you don't actually understand. The real obstacle is not in what you are failing to do. It's in what you have already done. Silently, decades ago, before you could name it. You took parts of yourself and buried them. You decided they were too much, too aggressive, too ambitious, too visible, too cold, too loud, too hungry, and you exiled them because someone, somewhere, made you believe those parts were the reason you weren't loved. Those parts didn't die. They went underground, and from underground, they have been running your life. Carl Jung called this hidden territory the shadow, the sum of everything you rejected in yourself in order to be acceptable. Not your evil, not your darkness as a moral failure. Something far more dangerous than that. The repressed inventory of your own power. And Jung was precise about what happens when you leave it untouched. It doesn't stay quiet. It sabotages you from the inside with exactly the skill and timing required to undo whatever threatens the small, safe identity you built to survive. This is why discipline hasn't saved you. Discipline is the conscious mind trying to force a result that the unconscious mind has already decided is dangerous. You can push harder. You can optimize longer. But as long as half of you is working against the other half, the ceiling will hold. What you're about to see is the mechanism beneath the pattern, the reason your best self keeps slipping through your fingers just as you're about to grasp it. You were not born divided. You became divided. Somewhere in childhood, earlier than you can remember, you ran an experiment you didn't know you were running. You expressed yourself fully, in every direction, loud, demanding, intense, curious, angry, proud, greedy for attention, hungry for more. And you watched, carefully, which parts of you were met with love and which parts were met with a flinch, a sigh, a punishment, a silence. You learned fast. You had to. The parts that earned love, you kept. You developed them. You built a personality around them. Those became you. The parts that triggered rejection, the anger, the boldness, the vanity, the coldness, the raw wanting, you pushed down. Not because they were evil, because they were expensive. They cost you the thing you needed most to survive, belonging. This is not a metaphor. This is what every child does, in every family, in every culture. It is the price of admission into the human world. Jung saw something most people miss about this exchange. The parts you banished did not vanish. They cannot vanish. Energy in the psyche does not disappear. It relocates. Everything you refused to be went into a room inside you with no door and waited. That room is the shadow. And here is the part that destroys the usual framing. The shadow is not your lower self. It is not the villain inside you. It is not the evil you must conquer through willpower and moral effort. The shadow is the unlived portion of your own psyche. Raw energy, repressed capacity, talents you were shamed out of, forms of strength you were taught to fear. Yes, it contains aggression. Yes, it contains ambition that doesn't apologize. Yes, It contains the version of you that takes space without asking permission. These were not defects, they were equipment, and you surrendered them before you understood what they were for. Jung was blunt about the cost of that surrender. What you refuse to make conscious will not sit politely in the basement. It will rule you from there. It will choose your partners. It will shape your reactions. It will write the script of your self-sabotage. And because it operates below awareness, you will experience its work as fate, as bad luck, as mysterious blocks, as "that's just how I am." It isn't fate. It's an exile staging a revolt from a room you pretend doesn't exist. Most people spend their entire lives trying to be a better version of the half of themselves they've accepted. They polish the acceptable side. They discipline it. They optimize it. And they cannot understand why their life keeps breaking at the same places. It breaks there because the other half, the one they pretend isn't real, keeps pulling the thread. You cannot win a war against yourself by refusing to look at the enemy, especially when the enemy is carrying everything you need. Which leads to the harder question, the one you've been circling without naming. Why does the shadow specifically target success? Why does it come alive the moment you approach the thing you say you want most? The answer has nothing to do with fear of failure. It has to do with a deeper fear your identity cannot survive. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You think you are afraid of failing. You are not. You are afraid of succeeding in a way that makes the old version of you impossible to return to. Read that again, slowly, because this is the sentence that explains almost every pattern in your life that has refused to change. The identity you carry, the way you describe yourself, the role you play in your family, the posture you take at work, the story you tell about who you are, was not freely chosen. It was assembled piece by piece as a survival strategy. It is the specific shape you had to take in order to be loved by the specific people who raised you. And every identity built that way has one rule written into its foundation. Do not become something these people cannot recognize. Success, real success, violates that rule, because real success requires exactly the qualities you exiled. It requires the ambition your family called greed, the assertiveness your teachers called rudeness, the visibility your culture called vanity, the cold clarity someone once called heartless, the hunger someone once called too much. To reach the next level, you have to become the person you were punished for being. And some part of you, the part that learned very early that punishment feels like death, will not allow it. This is the hidden logic of self-sabotage. It is not random. It is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is a perfectly coordinated defense, executed by a part of you that is still trying to protect the child you used to be. When you approach a breakthrough, the shadow does not panic about failure. It panics about what success will cost you in love, in belonging, in the familiar sense of self you've been clinging to since you were small. So, it acts, quietly, surgically. You procrastinate on the one task that would change everything. You pick the fight that derails the partnership. You forget the email. You get sick. You sleep through the alarm on the day that mattered. You reach the level you've been chasing, and instead of satisfaction, you feel a hollow dread, the feeling of an identity that no longer fits, and a psyche scrambling to restore what it knows. This is the invisible ceiling. It is not an external limit. It is the precise altitude at which your unconscious begins to feel that you are becoming unrecognizable to the people who formed you. And at that altitude, the shadow pulls you back down, not to hurt you, but to keep you inside the borders of the self it was trained to defend. Jung understood that most people never escape this loop because they never see it. They believe the sabotage is happening to them. They do not realize it is happening through them, from a place they refuse to look. The tragedy is surgical. You are being undone by a part of yourself that still believes it is saving you. and you cannot negotiate with what you cannot see. Before you can recover the energy that's been working against you, you have to find where it lives. You have to learn to see the shadow in the one place it always leaves fingerprints, the people you can't stop reacting to. Think of the last person who truly got under your skin. Not someone who wronged you, someone whose very existence seemed to offend you, someone whose confidence felt like an insult, whose ambition felt obscene, whose self-promotion you found embarrassing to watch, whose bluntness struck you as cruel, whose refusal to apologize for taking space seemed, to you, almost immoral. Hold that person in your mind for a moment, because you are about to meet yourself. Jung identified one of the most uncomfortable laws of the psyche, and he stated it without flinching. What you cannot tolerate in others is almost always what you have refused to tolerate in yourself. The intensity of your reaction is the measurement. Mild distaste means nothing. But the reactions that consume you, that make your jaw clench, that loop in your head for days, those are not observations. Those are projections. You are not seeing the other person. You are seeing the exiled part of yourself, wearing their face. This is what makes the shadow so difficult to find from the inside. It hides. It does not announce itself as you. It presents itself as the qualities of other people, qualities you feel entitled to criticize, because criticism creates distance, and distance lets you keep pretending those qualities are not yours. Now apply this to success. Look carefully at the successful people you quietly resent. Notice what specifically irritates you about them. It is almost never their achievement itself. It is a quality. She is so full of herself. He is ruthless. They're shameless self-promoters. They only care about money. They think they're better than everyone. They'll step on anyone to win. Every one of those sentences is a confession, because you cannot use a capacity you have spent your life disowning. If your ambition is projected onto ambitious people you despise, you do not have access to your ambition. If your assertiveness is exiled into aggressive people who make you uncomfortable, you cannot negotiate firmly, charge what you're worth, or hold a position under pressure. If your visibility is locked inside the shadow as attention seekers, you will not allow yourself to be seen. The qualities are still yours. You just handed the keys to strangers. And now you resent them for driving a life you were supposed to be living. This is the quiet devastation of projection. It does not only distort how you see others, it amputates what you can do. Jung described the meeting with the shadow as the first real act of becoming an adult, the apprentice piece of psychological development. Not because the shadow is the deepest layer, because nothing deeper is possible until this step is taken. Every attempt to grow, to succeed, to transform, while still projecting outward, is a house built on the territory of someone else. You will never out-discipline a projection. You will never out-hustle a capacity you have forbidden yourself to possess. You can build the most sophisticated strategy in the world, and it will fail quietly, because the person executing it is missing the very instruments the strategy requires. The way out begins with sight. Not insight in the vague sense, actual sight. You have to be able to locate the shadow, specifically, in your own life. And there are 3 places it leaves evidence so clear that once you learn to read it, you will never see yourself the same way again. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. You cannot integrate what you cannot see, and the shadow does not want to be seen. This is the paradox Jung laid at the center of the work. The psyche protects the shadow from consciousness with the same ferocity it uses to protect the body from a blade. Every time you get close, something in you will look away, change the subject, rationalize, get defensive, or quietly forget. This is not a flaw. It is the immune system of your identity, doing exactly what it was built to do. Which means finding the shadow cannot be done through introspection alone. Sitting with your eyes closed, asking, "What am I repressing?" will return silence. The shadow does not answer to direct questioning. It has to be caught in motion. Jung gave us 3 places where it always leaves prints. The first is projection. Make a list, not in your head, on paper, where you cannot edit it as you go. Write down the 5 qualities that most intensely irritate you in successful people. Not mild criticism, the ones that produce a visceral reaction. They are arrogant, they are calculating, they are self-absorbed, they don't care who they hurt. They're obsessed with status. Whatever yours are, write them exactly. That list is not a description of other people. It is an inventory of the energies you have exiled in yourself. Each line is a capacity locked behind a judgment. Each judgment is the lock. The second is disproportionate reaction. Track the moments when your emotional response is clearly larger than the event. A small critique that consumes your week. A minor embarrassment that plays on loop for months. A flash of shame so violent it makes your body go cold over something a stranger would have forgotten in an hour. The size of the reaction is the signal. The event was small. What was touched was not. Something in the shadow was grazed, and the whole system lit up in defense. Ask, precisely, what specifically made me feel that? Not the surface story, the underlying accusation. That accusation is the border of the shadow. The third is dreams. Jung took dreams seriously for a reason the modern mind has mostly forgotten. In sleep, the defenses fall. The figures that appear, the pursuer, the intruder, the dark stranger, the person of your same sex who threatens or unsettles you, are often the shadow, stepping out in personified form. Do not interpret them as omens, interpret them as information. What does that figure do? What quality do they carry? What are they demanding? Or what are they hiding? Write it down the moment you wake, before the daylight mind sanitizes it. These 3 techniques are not a self-improvement exercise. They are reconnaissance. You are learning to see the geography of a part of yourself you have walked around for decades. And most people are shocked, the first time they look honestly, to discover that their shadow is not full of monsters. It is full of refugees. Ambition that was called greed. Directness that was called rudeness. Confidence that was called arrogance. Desire that was called dangerous. Hunger that was called too much. These exiles are not your enemy. They are your resources, wearing the uniforms the world dressed them in. Which brings you to the step almost no one reaches. Seeing the shadow is not the end of the work. It is the beginning. Because every one of those exiled qualities is still yours, and still carrying energy. Energy you have been burning every day of your life to keep them locked away. That energy can be returned. And when it returns, the entire structure of what you thought was possible begins to shift. Here is what almost no one tells you about repression. It is not free. Every quality you have locked away is held in place by a constant expenditure of psychic energy. The aggression you refuse to feel has to be pressed down every hour of every day for decades. The ambition you are ashamed of has to be muted every time it stirs. The visibility you long for has to be strangled the instant it surfaces. This work never stops, and it is being paid for out of the same reservoir you are trying to use to build your life. You are exhausted, and you think it's the work. It isn't the work, it's the war. Jung understood that the shadow is not only a repository of what you rejected, it is a reservoir of energy, raw, unformed, and enormous. Every exile you banished is still charged, and integration is not an act of moral improvement. It is an act of reclamation. You are not becoming worse by facing the shadow. You are recovering what was taken from you, often by people who never meant to take it. Watch what happens when each specific exile comes home. The aggression you were punished for, the intensity that once got you called too much, does not return as cruelty. It returns as the capacity to hold a position under pressure, to say no without a 3-paragraph apology, to negotiate firmly, to defend what you've built without collapsing when someone pushes back. Without it, you overconcede, you undercharge, you let people walk over work that cost you years. With it, you stop bleeding out through every interaction. The ambition your family called greed does not return as exploitation. It returns as direction. The willingness to want something specific out loud without immediately shrinking it. The ability to pursue it without self-sabotaging at the threshold as a kind of preemptive penance for wanting too much. Without integrated ambition, every breakthrough dismantles itself. With it, you can finally build past the ceiling that has always held. The vanity you were taught to despise does not return as narcissism. It returns as the simple, adult capacity to be seen, to put your work in front of people without apologizing for its existence, to speak with authority when you have it, to stop hiding as a form of politeness. Without it, you will build brilliant things that no one finds. With it, you become visible enough for your work to reach the life it was built for. The coldness you were shamed into burying does not return as cruelty either. It returns as clarity. The ability to analyze a situation without being hijacked by guilt, loyalty, or fear of disappointing someone. The ability to make the strategic call cleanly when the moment demands it. Without it, your decisions are distorted by emotional weather. With it, you can finally tell the difference between the right choice and the comfortable one. Notice what integration is and what it is not. It is not license. It is not permission to become hard, ruthless, or cold. Jung was explicit. Integration tempered by consciousness is not the same as acting out. You are not unleashing the shadow. You are bringing it into relationship with the rest of you, where it can finally be used, rather than having it use you from below. This is the quiet revolution. The qualities you have been trying to embody through discipline are not external virtues you need to install. They are already inside you, locked behind an old verdict. You do not need to become someone new. You need to unfreeze someone old. And when that energy comes home, when the war ends and the exiles return to the household, something begins to happen that no external achievement has ever been able to give you. There is a kind of success that does not feel like success. You reach the thing you spent years chasing, and instead of arrival, there is a strange flatness, a quiet panic, a feeling that the person who got there is not the person who wanted it. You look around and realize you have been running a race to prove something to a version of yourself that would never have been satisfied anyway. This is what it feels like to succeed with half of yourself missing. Most people interpret that emptiness as a sign they need more. More money, more recognition, a bigger win, a different industry, a new relationship. They chase the next thing because the last thing did not work. And the next thing will not work either, because the problem was never the size of the achievement. The problem was the size of the self that arrived to receive it. You cannot be completed by anything external when half of your own psyche has been left outside the door. This is the truth Jung spent his life circling back to. Wholeness is not something you build through acquisition. It is something you recover through honesty. And the person who refuses that recovery will spend their entire life in a strange, functional suffering, accomplished, admired, internally starving. The hardest thing in this work is not facing the darkness. It is facing the fact that what you have called your darkness was, for the most part, simply your life, your appetite, your force, your edges, your capacity to want, to take, to refuse, to stand, to be seen, to act without apology. These were never your shadow in any moral sense. They were the parts of you that were inconvenient to someone else, and you paid for that inconvenience by disowning yourself. The challenge now is not behavioral. It is not a checklist. It is not a morning routine. The challenge is whether you are willing to stop being a stranger to yourself, whether you are willing to look at the people who irritate you and ask what they are carrying that belongs to you, whether you are willing to feel the disproportion of your own reactions instead of justifying them, whether you are willing to notice the specific surgical ways you dismantle your own progress, and to understand that the saboteur is not an enemy, but an exile waiting to be let back in. Whether you are willing to let the ambition, the assertiveness, the visibility, the clarity come home, and to build, for the first time in your life, with the full weight of who you actually are. Success built from a divided psyche is always fragile, because half of your energy is fighting the other half. Success built from integration is different, not easier, not free of difficulty, but no longer at war with itself. The ceiling you have been hitting for years was never about the world. It was the altitude at which your unconscious began to pull you back toward a self it could still recognize. When the self becomes larger, the altitude becomes larger. That is the only real growth there is. If something in you has been waking up while you listened, don't let that feeling pass without meeting it. Leave a comment with the part of yourself you suspect you have been exiling the longest. Not because naming it fixes anything, but because speaking it is the first honest act of return. And then keep going. Because what started inside you in the last 40 minutes is not the kind of process that finishes when a video ends. You already know that. The next step is waiting, and some part of you has already turned toward it.